Our guest this week, you might know if you have ever posted a question in a forum, especially about drone law. Chances are you've seen the name Ryan J. Latourette pop up. And he always has helpful, timely, and most importantly, accurate advice for people with questions ranging from beginner to more advanced. He is the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Great Lakes Drone Company. We had Matt Quinn on the podcast last week. And he also runs Capital Drones. And more importantly, he blogs over at what is called That Drone Blog. You can find that, and he has some really well-written, insightful, and interesting pieces. It not only goes well into detail on what the issue might be, but also what you can do if you encounter it. So case in point, his latest post was someone getting his drone damaged and going to court. And so he tells you what you can do. So check out that drone blog while you're at it. But I'm thrilled to have Ryan on the podcast today because his expertise and insights are so valuable to this community. So thank you for being on, Ryan.
And thank you for the invitation. I'd love to come on. I love talking about drones every single day. And so it's nice to have that invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So I want to know how you got involved in drones, because I know that you have been working in other fields besides aviation for decades and have been tenured. But how did you get into drones to begin with?
So a great story, funny story. Back in, 2013, I believe it was, or 2012, my family, my extended family was selling our family farm. And I got to thinking, hey, I would really love to have an aerial picture of our family farm before it gets sold. So I went around and I shopped. Hey, what does it cost to have a helicopter do this? What does it cost to have a Cessna do this? And I kept getting quotes of $1,500, $2,000. It was insane. And I thought, no, I'll put it off for the time being. And I happened to see the DJI Phantom 1, the very first model, and looked at the price and went, I can do this. I've got a GoPro. I'll hang it on there. I'll take the drone out, get my shot, bring it down, sell the drone. I'm out basically maybe $50. I'm good to go. So I never did get that family farm photo shot, never flew it out there, and never sold the drone. So that's kind of the fun that I've had, and just enjoyed the drone so much I had to stick with it.
Was this before you could buy a drone at Best Buy and return it almost a year later, Ryan? Or
Exactly, yeah. I did get it online. I remember that. And the really interesting thing was you didn't have any ability to see what your shot was going to be. You literally hung that GoPro on and spray and pray. You're hoping you had the right angle for the GoPro to look down, and if you didn't, well, fly up again. And I think you got 5 to 7 minutes flight time. That was huge.
Yeah. Did you have that cheap Chinese gimbal that went on it to stabilize the GoPro?
I ended up buying a cheap gimbal. I wouldn't say it's so cheap. I think it was like $80 at the time, for just an attach-on gimbal. And then I did some rigging so that I could have 2 batteries set up and get some extra flight time. And but you couldn't turn on Wi-Fi with the GoPro because it would mess up your signal. So
Yep. Yeah, I had the same exact setup. So yep.
So talk us through, like, what was the next drone that you had, and like just talk us through to today, basically from that first flying experience.
Yep. So I made the immediate jump after having the Phantom 1. I made the immediate jump into having the very first Inspire 1. So I went smallish to, hey, this is a big drone. This was the top of the line thing that was coming out. And at that point I thought, this is really something. It's got an incredible camera. You can, basically take, another person and have them operate the drone if you wanted while you were doing the camera, or vice versa. The versatility of that drone, it was my tripod in the sky. You put that thing up in, 30-mile-an-hour wind, and it was like, what are you talking about? There's no wind here. So I did that, and at that point, Phantom 3 came out. I had to get a P3P. I just kept going. So I've had dozens of drones. My favorite go-to right now, I've still got the Inspire, but I've got it. I got the One Pro Black version. Really nice to see in the sky. Otherwise, my go-to is really the M2P. Because it's just so stable, 20 megapixels. The 1-inch sensor is great, and then I can swap that out with my M2E Dual and have thermal if I want. So just a lot of versatility. And I mean, I've even got like stupid drones. Like this is the one they just sent me, the Holy Stone. Just fun to throw into the air and inside the house and run it down the hall and keep in practice. Rainy days, we got to fly.
Yeah. You connected me with Helen over there. I still need to follow up with her and try that out.
Right.
So it looks like fun. I'm sure my daughter would have fun with it.
That's the latest one she sent me, and that's a nice little drone. It has hand signals like the the Mavic, the Spark.
Sparky, yeah.
This is the Spark, and so hand signals with that one too, and fun for in the house. You wouldn't fly it outside.
So Ryan, how do you go from flying all these to getting more involved into the regulation side of things? Because I know you spend a lot of time, and I know you're very knowledgeable in a lot of these things. And I also want you to talk about some of the projects that you've worked on, helping the community and helping some of the groups in Michigan to go against some of the bad regulation, I'm going to call it.
Right. Well, pretty much immediately after I started flying the initial Phantom 1, I was seeing that you almost needed to be a part-time lawyer in order to fly, because you were being challenged every place that you went, not just by law enforcement, but by regular general public. Hey, you can't fly here. You're near an airport. Well, as long as you're following the rules, you can. Mm-hmm. And so it became important to me to really verse myself in the rules so that I could educate anybody I came across. That led to, hey, let's go ahead and have a presentation for, law enforcement. I would fly down at the Michigan State Capitol building, and I would gather a crowd of Michigan State police who were guarding the Capitol building. And so it was a chance, hey, I can educate you, train you, and to the point that I would hand over my controls and be able to have them fly. And you're talking, a trooper being able to fly an Inspire as their first drone, that's pretty significant. And the idea was, the more I got involved with the regulatory aspects, the more I could share. And by doing that, I was really changing the community. So now suddenly, instead of everybody coming, oh, you can't fly here, they go, oh, that's Ryan, that's the drone guy. He knows what he's doing, and he's training other people. And so that really changed the course of things, where suddenly it was more accepted to see a drone in the sky versus, I wonder what that thing's doing. I'm curious, and I want to shoot it out of the sky. So that type of change was a positive direction. In turn, I looked at it and said, there's other things that we can do to help the drone community as a whole. And that's where it got into, we need to start looking at the laws that are in place and how we can change the laws or change the trajectory of the laws such that it helps drone operators versus hinder them. So when it was going through the House at the Michigan State Capitol, that there was going to be a drone law that would help to make sure we didn't have a patchwork of regulations, localities creating their own enforcement actions, I was all on board and talking with legislatures to help make that happen. There were 3 towns here in Michigan that had already at that point set up their own regulatory actions against drones. DeWitt was the first one. DeWitt Township had, the city of DeWitt had put together an ordinance that they were reading, and it was basically saying you cannot fly drones within our town because we are 4.5 miles from a major airport. And so I called a bunch of Michigan drone operators and said, hey, can you come down to this meeting? We need to make sure that we represent the drone community and change the trajectory of this law. We did a fair job in that, and yet at the same token, they still went forward with that ordinance. So I was very pleased when the Michigan State House and Senate did pass the legislation, and the current governor at the time, Rick Snyder, signed it into law that disabled them from executing or enforcing that ordinance. So now in the state of Michigan, what we have is this landscape where it doesn't matter where you go, you know that as long as you're following FAA regulations, you're in the clear. Versus prior to that, it was, I can't fly in East Lansing at risk of getting a ticket because they have their own ordinance. Fast forward now to a couple of years later, we have Genesee County who decided, well, we don't care what the state has thought. We're going to do our own thing. And so we had to come together as a group and think about how are we going to handle this? And it turned out, my intent was I was going to go down to Genesee County and fly in the park with the sole interest of getting a ticket. I wanted to be able to get that ticket, go before the judge, and be able to say, look at the state law. They've just violated the state law by giving me a ticket. I need you to do something about it. Well, the night before the big event that probably everyone's heard about, Jason Harrison gave me a call and he said, I hear you're looking for somebody to fly in Genesee County. I said, well, yeah, I'm planning to fly there, but if you want to do that, go ahead. And Jason was the perfect person for it. The guy, he just has a great mindset. He's very calm in demeanor. And so he goes and flies, has all the cameras, with him to record all the interaction with the police. And then they go above and beyond to make our case even stronger by detaining him, by confiscating his equipment and so forth. I felt horrible. When he called me and he said, yeah, they took my drone, I thought, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. And I offered him, I said, you can, have one of mine for the time being. And, what can we do about this? And that's when we got involved with Dean Greenblatt. And he is a fantastic attorney, FAA certified pilot, private pilot. So he knows the FAA laws as well as state laws, and really took it to Genesee County and pushed that thing through. And inevitably we got the injunction, and we go from there.
Yeah, and you guys won. So I guess the follow-up question with this is, what do you think about the Lee bill that's going on right now? And for the listeners, I'm just going to mention, this bill right now, which is floating around, which would give a lot more freedom for local municipalities and local governments to create their own set of rules. And this is a big discussion that's going on in the industry right now. So obviously you've been fighting this. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we should say that Mike Lee has tried this multiple times. It's year after year. He's continued to put this thing forward. And I don't see, and I think that he says that he's softening it each year to make it more palatable to other senators, but it's not. The idea that he's rolling with is something that even AirMap, Greg McNeil has proposed, that you give localities their own ability to regulate things, and then you can potentially charge drone operators to be able to know, hey, can I fly here or not? What's my ordinance in this particular location? That's a real burden on everybody, whether you're a hobbyist or a Part 107. It's just insane. So I do think we continue to fight that. We need more voices to stand up. We need more people to call their senators, call their congressmen, write their senators, write their congressmen, make that happen.
Ryan, question for you though. Like in an ideal world, what would you want to see happening in this country in terms of people standing up and representing Part 107 pilots, hobbyists? And because, I mean, you're in Michigan, you're one person doing a phenomenal job in that sense, but we need like 49 more Ryans basically to cover the rest of the country. What do we need as a group of drone pilots, whether it's Part 107 or hobbyists, to be able to stand up to all these communities, all these counties and towns to kind of make us heard?
Well, the first thing for me, and this is the critical point, is that we as a drone company or drone community need to come together. In a lot of forums, what you see are Part 107 saying, hey, the hobbyists are destroying it for our industry. Well, wait a minute. And you have the hobbyists saying, hey, the Part 107 are really out to get us. Mm-hmm. Well, wait a second. And then you have, the FPV pilots who, both are like, why are you guys accepting registration? Why are you guys accepting, airspace authorization? I'm flying under the treetops. Why am I bothering anybody? So I think that the first thing that we need to have happen is some unity. Right now you have the FAA that's, using that, Sun Tzu, the art of war, where they've divided and conquered. So you have three separate groups that are, clawing at each other, cutting each other's throat. Let's stop that. Let's understand that we are one. It doesn't matter if you're an AMA member flying a model aircraft and you think, drones are not model aircraft. No, they're one and the same. We're under the same umbrella in terms of regulation. Part 107, understand, you don't go out and just get your Part 107 and start flying for money. You probably have flown as a hobbyist to learn the craft, to learn, all the controls, get that muscle memory going. So let's stop fighting amongst ourselves, accept that, hey, we all fly drones, and then make a concerted effort on the next steps. And those next steps, I think, to me, there are two forms. One, we have to look at Michigan's model where you have a state come in and say, you must not be able to have localities create or enforce their own drone ordinances. So if you preempt those localities at the state level, then it doesn't matter at the federal level if they come through and say something. Let's say the federal government comes through and says, we are going to allow everybody to create their own ordinances. Well, the state has said, hey, we're going to lock things down at our state level. Okay, we've got field preemption at that point. So I think it's important that we have 17 states right now that have preemption over localities. Let's expand that out to the other 33 states and get that in place. I think the next step as well is looking at the federal level and saying, we need to start controlling the voice of the FAA in terms of what they're providing out to the public. So right now you have the FAA saying, well, report every drone you see as a potential issue sighting, and accepting verbatim what a pilot gives. I saw a drone at 30,000 feet that came within 100 feet of me. No, you didn't. So, if you think that, well, let's document that somewhere and let's make that somewhere the trash can. Let's not make it, this report that comes out every quarter and send out to the general public that then says, hey, Mr. General Public, report every drone you see as a problem. That to me is a real issue.
Do you think remote ID is going to help with that?
I am very skeptical about remote ID helping with that. I think the purpose of remote ID is going to be used by the general public to harass drone pilots. Knowing where somebody is, I can go down and find you and, verbally assault you or do something worse. I think from a law enforcement standpoint, it's going to be a harassment issue as well, where they're going to be able to come to you. They aren't trained. The FAA doesn't have the money to go out and train individuals. So that officer is going to come up and say, hey, you need to land that. You're doing something wrong. not even knowing that, no, they're acting entirely, professionally. They've got everything that they need in terms of registration, authorization, what have you. I don't think that that remote ID is going to help in that respect.
So
Do you think people are going to comply with remote ID at all, or no?
Well, the idea is that they're not going to have a choice. That your drones that are going to be manufactured, after 18 months are going to already have remote ID built in. It's sort of like the VCRs and CD or DVD players that you would not be able to copy a movie because your equipment disallows that. Well, yeah, there's hacks that you can do to make that happen, but the majority of just standard everyday people aren't going to do that hack. They don't know how, and so they're going to come to accept it. I think the FPV pilots have a really good statement when they say, we aren't going to comply. We build our own drones. We don't fly in the national airspace. It's going to be very difficult for the FAA to argue that under 100 feet is national airspace unless you're directly next to an airport. That idea that I can't fly in my backyard in Washington, D.C., I don't think is going to hold much weight in court once that's finally challenged.
Very interesting. Can you talk about the fight in, I want to go back to Genesee County, and how did you guys organize around all of this? Because this was kind of your goal, obviously, to get a ticket and then to fight it in court. How long did that take? Kind of how much money really did that take, if you can share that? Because this is not an expense. This is not a cheap thing. And based on your experience with the process, is this something that you would recommend to other communities to go through?
Yeah. So, one, in terms of the challenge to Genesee County, we developed a coalition that we called the Michigan Coalition of Drone Operators, MCDO, and that coalition was built after we got the ticket and after the ticket was thrown out of court initially. We sat down and decided we need to talk about what are our next steps, and so we held a fly-in picnic at Genesee County, telling them we're going to be here. All these drone pilots are going to be here in your park, and we're all going to fly drones together. And so it was that amalgamation of people coming together to have a barbecue with cops watching over us and flying fake drones. I had an Xbox controller. It was very fun. Oh, look up in the sky when there's nothing, right? But I think that community came together to say, yeah, I want to be able to fly wherever I can, and why should I be inhibited here? We had initially talked, do we bring about people in a dues process, a membership? We haven't gone there. We will eventually. I think that's one of our next steps. But it was gauging interest of all the drone operators in that area. Typically it was the Flint area, and putting together that coalition. Now I can share some news, right? MCDO has had another challenge where Genesee County is not the only county that's thumped its chest and said, we can regulate the airspace, we can regulate all drone operations. Ottawa County has now stepped up and said the very same thing. So I believe that later this week, we are going to be officially filing lawsuit against the county with the same argument that they are violating MCL 259-305 by having created and being poised to enforce a drone ordinance that is illegal by state law. With that, we've had more individuals, especially now on the west side of the state, because Ottawa County is over on the west coast of Michigan, that have stepped up and said, I want to be a part of this. Cost-wise, we are going to be doing a fundraiser for that. I suspect we're going to be in the $6,000 to $10,000 area to start. But I believe that that's doable, where we'll have enough individuals who I think are going to come forward and say, I'll match the first $100, I'll match the first $500, and be able to, step out to the nation and say, as a drone community, can you help us here in Michigan? And we're setting the model for you down the road. So yeah, it's a grassroots effort.
Please send me information when you have that, because we have a lot of students in that area, and I do want to help with that. So please.
I was going to ask you, Ryan. I mean, if people in different states in the country are listening to this show and they think, yeah, we got the same problem here in Texas or in Washington, D.C. or Florida, wherever. If they want to be able to replicate your best practices and learn from the things that you guys have been through, I mean, is there anybody they can reach out to? Can they reach out to you and say, hey, we want to build up the same support system here and take the same kind of actions?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'm already talking to folks from other states. Illinois has been looking to step up. They have their own group that's kind of active and understanding what it means. Illinois is one of the states that does already also have a preemption, like Michigan. So they have some communities there that have put forward some drone ordinances, and Jeff Clementi has actually challenged one of those and won in court. So that's one of those. Florida is another. Colorado. So we do have some states where folks are saying, hey, I want to see this happen in my state as well. And we're working with those folks as to how that's going to take place. Now, one of the things is you need to have, a standing in court. So you're going to have to already have a community like Genesee County that was saying, we're not going to allow this. So that we can then target that community basically with an attorney letter. Hey, are you willing to pursue this? Because this is against state law, and make that information. And even here in Michigan, we've had a number of other cities that have put forward ordinances. And when the attorney letter hit them, oh, no, we aren't going to enforce that. We'll take it off the books. So I don't want to go out and say, get a ticket, right? I'm a hothead in that way where I was willing to do that. That is probably not the best way to go about this. If you have a city that's putting forward an ordinance that is clearly illegal in violation of state law, or that you just want to get rid of, reach out and let's talk about it. Let's see what the appropriate process would be. We're going to have to work with a local attorney. Yeah, it's going to cost some money, but if you've got some friends, you got some other drone operators, we can get together a grassroots organization and take that lawsuit to the county or to the city, whatever it might be.
Ryan, can you talk about, I want to get your opinion on this. This was in the news not too long ago, and I don't remember which state it was in, but this township hires this pilot to record, and I know you know what I'm talking about, to record footage, and then they get sued because they're saying that it's against the First Amendment or Fourth Amendment, and then... Well, I'm going to let you tell the story, actually, because you probably know more of the details than I do on this. But I want to get your story on this and kind of explain to our listeners what is going on there.
So it's Long Lake Township versus Maxon. And just how it happens, it's right here in Michigan. So northern Michigan, what it is a drone pilot was hired by the township to go and take pictures of this individual's property. And to be able to recognize whether this individual was acting as a junkyard. The township had many run-ins with this guy over a number of years. He continued to collect items on his property. He would move them around so often. He would hide them under trees so they couldn't be seen from, or couldn't well be seen from a satellite view. And so the township said, let's enough. Let's see what a drone can do. The lawsuit goes into the idea not of the case itself, right, but of the evidence. So regardless of what they ruled, the appeal here was that a drone cannot be used because it is an instrument that has higher technology than what could be obtained by another camera. So a DSLR standing on the ground, or a DSLR from an airplane, which would not provide the same images. And so that's where this narrowed, is this evidence admissible to the court or not? And the initial ruling here was that no, this evidence could not be used in the court because it was higher tech. Now, here's the thing. I talked to the drone pilot who did that operation, and he laid it out. This is not a high-tech thing. This is a Phantom 4. So you're talking a 20 megapixel camera. He was flying at a height of between 300 and 350 feet. So you are not talking about a thermal camera that can see inside the windows. You're not talking about some high resolution detail of a 80 megapixel camera. This was literally done in NAS airspace, right? The national airspace at that level. So I think the challenge here was the challenge was to have the township understand that they needed to appeal, that this was a bad decision by the judge based on very terrible evidence. And I think there was a concern that the attorney in this case did not have enough information to really present the idea of a drone being operated in national airspace, of being able to follow the rules. One of the concerns was that the defense counsel had put forward this drone flew over people, and they had cropped one of the pictures to show, hey, here's the guy on the ground, and that drone is directly above him. Well, the flight plans clearly point out that no, he was never directly over him, and the photo itself, you can tell, no, if I can see the front of your shirt, I am not directly over the top of you. So right now the appeal is in process. Michigan Township Association has come in and offered some help. Many of the drone companies, manufacturers, have come forward and offered amicus briefs. The National Press Photographers Association, same thing, amicus brief. And so we do hope that as this goes to the Michigan Supreme Court, that they're going to understand this was a bad decision in terms of, putting forward that this is advanced technology. It's not. That this is unavailable technology to a township. It's not. The township could have hired a Cessna pilot to do the same thing with a higher end DSLR to get even more spectacular images. This was just a cost savings for them. To me, it doesn't matter whether you're pro-government, anti-government in terms of them seeking out a warrant. That's not what this particular thing is about. That take that aside, you could still have a decision made on that's separate. This is purely, can you use a drone to take images of a property without having a warrant? And the answer is yes, you can. And that's what we want to have happen.
Yeah, because the consequences are pretty high on the decision there from the appeal court. What are the consequences if this sticks?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind would be that any Part 107, right? If you're hired to do something, whether that's a real estate shot or what have you, then you're going to be potentially held liable for taking pictures and invading the privacy of another person. Even if you're at 300 feet, that's ridiculous. When you look at the use by first responders, so a fire department coming in and flying, if there's a fire at your house, the fire department can't just roll up in your driveway and hook to the hoses and start putting out the fire, they have to do a 360-degree walk around to that property before they can start to engage with that fire. Well, that's fine if you're a small one house, solution. But if you're a warehouse, of 120,000 square feet, that's quite a walk. So if you get a drone up there and fly it around, that's another story where you can, reduce your time. Well, no fire company is going to do that if it means that they're going to get a lawsuit that says, hey, you can't do this, you're invading my privacy, even though you're trying to help that person. The same with police. I'm going to try to assess a hostage situation. I'm going to try to assess, what booby traps are in an area that, kids are going through. Those become real challenges that you don't want to encounter that. I'm surprised you haven't talked about Cody, right? Cody Coppola. So.
Oh yeah, that was the subject on your latest post.
Right.
So yeah.
So let me give that quick story, right? So you've got Cody.
Yeah. Wait, can we just start off with?
Yeah.
Oh wait, I don't want you to cut you off. Can we just start off with the fact that the FAA and the DOJ has yet to prosecute anyone who has destroyed a drone and how screwed up that is? Why doesn't the FAA take action against this type of stuff? It really is frustrating. But go on, Ryan. I just had to get on my soapbox. Yeah, I had to get on my soapbox.
And it's a good soapbox to get on.
Yeah.
I think, there is some good news in that. I think the FAA is pursuing one action right now. It's still in process, but a drone did get shot down, and they are starting to look at prosecuting that shooter. The unfortunate piece is that drone was a police drone. So they have, extra incentive that they must chase that person down. And I think, that could be the precedent we're looking for. But it's maddening to think that the FAA went to such great lengths when they prosecuted Raphael Perker, back in 2014, I believe it was, to say that drones are indeed aircraft. And if you're going to say that drones are indeed aircraft, then you've got to enforce 18 USC 32 that says if you're going to damage or destroy an aircraft, you need to be held accountable. Yeah. In Cody's case, Cody goes out and he's flying, and he has a basketball thrown at the drone, knocks it down, destroys the drone. And the police actually came. They were involved. I believe that he was the one that called the police after there was a confrontation with the neighbor who his kids were the ones who threw the basketball. And the police initially came in like it was Cody's fault. Well, what are you doing flying here? You can't fly here. And it goes to that education level again. But I think the key here was that Cody was thinking, gosh, I'm out my drone and I shouldn't be. I need some restitution for this, and decided rightfully to take it to court, small claims court, and see what a judge would do. He got a great amount of pushback on forums, which was surprising to me, that everybody in the forum, oh, you can't do that. You can't fly around an empty property and shoot it because that's a Part 107 operation. No, it's not. You can fly around an empty property as a hobbyist. That's great. And the key is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's flying or where they're flying. The key is, you shot down an aircraft, you knocked down an aircraft, and you destroyed somebody's property. You need to be held accountable for that. And so he went into court with that mindset. I think there was a great fortune that the individual that he was challenging had said, I threw the basketball at this, and I was in my right to do that. And Cody said, well, the video shows clearly that it was your kids doing the throwing of that basketball. And he asked the judge, do we have to tell the truth here in court? Oops, all that credibility goes out the window, right?
No, that's just amazing. I was just lamenting at how stupid you have to be to ask if you need to tell the truth under oath. But yeah, it's just crazy.
So,
So what
the
happened
nice
at the
thing
end?
was that he got that settlement, and indeed he got paid, which is another thing. You can get a settlement in court, and you're lucky if you're going to get that restitution or not. But here he did, and was able to pick up a new drone and keep flying.
So do you think, I always wondered about this because we've seen a lot of these getting reported, people getting shot, not a basketball, but an actual gun, and these drones getting shut down. Do you think this is going to change when we start to see more deliveries out there and the Amazon drone that costs, $100 and some $1,000 gets shut down? Do you think there's going to be a lot more pressure from the big companies? Because we know it's going to happen. We know people are waiting for these drones to start delivering, to shoot them down, to take their loot and then go away. So I've asked this question many times from drone delivery companies and asked them if they have an actual program to prevent sky pirates. That's what I'm going to call them. But do you think that this is going to change in the future?
Yeah, it's taking the porch thief to new heights, right? Yeah. So I do think that, Amazon's going to be one that steps up and says, hey, you need to enforce laws on the books, or better yet, I think they'll join the drone community in calling for a specific law that is targeting drones. Right now, 18 USC 32, you could kind of weed through that and say, well, it's really only intended for a manned operation. That's fine. If you want to go that route, then go that route. But I think you're going to have those companies, UPS, Amazon, et cetera, that may step up and say, you need something that specifically identifies, our aircraft that are unmanned. And once that happens, I think we as a community as well have to step in there and say, we want to make sure that covers small UAS. So not just those 55 pounds and over. We want everything covered. And I really think that that's what it's going to come to. It'll be a lobbying effort on our part to make that happen.
And I think also we need protection for the crew and the pilot. Right now, the only protection we have is for manned aircraft crew, the way that everything is worded, but there is no actual protection. So, you mentioned remote ID and you mentioned people getting harassed. And I believe that there's going to be issues where we need protection for the people on the ground. What do you think?
The FAA has always had a phrase that any regulation was basically written in blood. And the idea was that somebody had to die in order for that regulation to come about. Mm-hmm. And I will say it right here, right now, and I've said it before, someone is going to die because of remote ID. Somebody is going to get shot by a person that wants to take action against a drone operator, knows their location, and is going to make that trek to that individual and do the deed. And once that happens, I think the FAA is going to probably go, we have no choice. We need to protect the pilots. But here's the situation, right? We don't have that. We don't have to have that. Let's be preemptive and make sure that we don't have that.
Yep. Is there anything else that resembles remote ID elsewhere in our lives? I mean, I know people make the reference to license plates on vehicles, but that's not quite the same as remote ID. Is there anything else that you are aware of that's as invasive, basically, as remote ID is?
Well, the FAA will tell you that ADS-B is that same concept, right? And that aircraft that are flying in controlled airspace right now have to have ADS-B, and that's broadcast out. Well, if you look at that, it's not the same. The problem there is it covers, this plane is flying from Pittsburgh to Atlanta. Well, you're not going to chase that plane down to find that pilot. So that you don't have anything like that. Other than that, you have GPS tracking that requires a warrant by police to put on your vehicle and be able to figure out where you're at. It's unconscionable that we have remote ID that is going to literally say to the public, here's where that person is doing something legally.
Oh, I think if you were to, let's say, apply remote ID to automobiles and require anybody driving a car to have a similar system set up that would basically give away your identity and, let's say, tell people where you live and all that stuff and where you're heading with your car, people would be up in arms. I mean, it would never ever fly. No pun intended, but still, it would never work. And here we are with drones. It's like, oh, we're just going to make publicly available your location, your ID, the kind of drone you're flying. And I mean, how easy can we make it for people to basically rob you from your Inspire 1 or 2 or any other expensive drone that you're flying? It's ridiculous, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, Ryan. With the it's we always call it blood priority when I was studying for aviation. The regulation is created by accidents and dead people. So I hope we'd never get to that point, and I hope I'm wrong. But the FAA, if you read the NPRM and the final ruling, they do mention that they've listened and they said, yeah, we're aware that this is an issue, but we're going to create regulation that prevents people from getting attacked, and it's already in place. I don't think that's the solution. I think this is going to be, to me, this was the number one issue in the remote ID regulation that came out that they haven't fixed and that they should have fixed. Do you think there is a solution? What is the solution? If the FAA wanted to say tomorrow, we are only going to provide remote ID location for the pilot to law enforcement and the FAA, can they do it?
Well, I actually commented on the NPRM with just that, to say that there should be some mandates that it's only available to law enforcement. And I went on to say not only that it should be available to law enforcement, it should only be available to law enforcement with proper warrant, proper reason, reasonable suspicion of activity, right? The idea that, local Joe Cop can pull up that information and then come out and just harass you for whatever reason. No, they need to have a particular reason why they need to come and intervene. And then I asked as well, if you're going to allow that to happen, when, even with a warrant and being able to have police track that individual, you need to have some type of audit, right? To be able to say, this officer isn't just going around looking at every single remote operator that flies in this particular area of the city. No, they need to have some real controls to be able to say, this officer had a particular reason. He documented that reason. He went to get a court order for that. Now, again, that takes time. That if you're going to have a warrant, you got to go before a judge and your battery is 20 to 30 minutes. The argument is that person is going to be gone. Well, okay. Then have you done anybody a service by interrupting that operation anyhow? I really come back to the idea that this is probably a 4-pound or less aircraft. What are the dangers of it operating? If we look at our drone operators, right, we have more drone operators in the United States than there are licensed manned pilots, period, end of story. And if we look across the scale at accidents, there has not been a fatality from a drone operation since 2013. And that was a model helicopter, RC helicopter, that killed its own pilot, right? So it wasn't even a member of the general public. Now, if you look at just helicopters alone, they account for, on average, 20 fatalities per year. Why are we looking at a 4-pound aircraft and making regulations when 20 people a year are dying from a 2-ton or more helicopter? And we just go, oh, no worries.
Yeah. Can I just say that there are some really obnoxious helicopter pilots that want to jump on your comments and your drone photos and say that's illegal when it's not. There was this one that was especially obnoxious in San Francisco. He didn't even know. He was saying, oh, it's illegal to take a drone shot at night, which isn't true because if you had a waiver back then. And also the sun was still setting, so he didn't even know about that 30-minute dusk. It was ridiculous. But I do have a question. What makes the FAA go after some people and not others? I mean, I think back to I think it was 2016 when Casey Neistat had he had flown a lot around New York City. It was a big thing, that the FAA was looking into it, and then he got off the hook. There was another guy. I don't want to name names, but there's another guy who went viral with some drone footage over the city of Manhattan, like right over moving cars. It's still up on his Instagram. I don't think he's had any blowback. That being said, I have spoken to people before that said, "Oh yeah, the FAA contacted me. I just block them on social. I don't care," which is to me is insane. But there are some people that will do it. They don't have any skin in the game, and so they just don't care. But recently, there was a photographer in the NFT space, and again, I'm not going to say his name, but he now had to hire legal representation because his first sale, or his first piece that he listed for sale, was a top down of the geothermal pond in Yellowstone Park, where you obviously cannot fly because it's about 5 miles in from the border at Yellowstone National Park. Now for some reason, the NFT community got all over that. And now he still has it up. And I think he's charging like 7 Ethereum for it. It's still up there listed for sale, which is odd because I have learned that he has gotten legal counsel now. So how is it that some people get busted and others go free? I mean, there are people breaking the law, and why doesn't the FAA apply the same rules to everybody?
Yeah, so, well, the first interesting fact, right, is talking about that shot at Yellowstone. I don't know if you know, but the NPS, the National Park System, has charged more drone operators than the FAA has. The NPS has actually enforced more fines against drone operators than the FAA. Now think about that. Wait a minute.
I did not know that.
So you kind of go, that wow. And the NPS, the way that they're doing it, they don't even have to see you operate in that park, right? So what they've been doing is they have somebody that goes out and looks at YouTube, or I know of a case out in Utah, where the park rangers saw it on the local news station that here's this beautiful fall footage of this, national park. Hey, these guys can't fly there. I have his name. It's posted on the screen, flown by this person, and they prosecuted him, and they won a hefty sum of money. The FAA, though, and Casey's case is the prime example of this. When they were looking at prosecuting or doing any type of enforcement of action with Casey, they came back and they said, we can't. And they said that because they could never prove that he was the one at the controls of the bird. So they could see the drone in the footage. They could see him with the controls, but never could you see the two together. And even if that's the case, hey, I'm showing the controls here, I show the drone at the same time, does that mean I'm really the one operating it? Well, I can say, no, I wasn't. My buddy over here, I've got control, so it looks like I'm doing it. But that was the key element to drone operators across the nation to say, I can really do what I want because the FAA's got to prove that.
Ryan, do you think that the FAA is approaching drones in the appropriate way, or should the FAA come up with a separate division that's purely focused and addresses unmanned aviation? Do you not think that the FAA is so set in their ways and so focused on the traditional manned aviation world that they're not really equipped to a rapidly developing and fast-growing drone industry?
Well, of interest, they do have their own drone segment at the FAA. Eric Amend is the head of that, or I shouldn't say the head, but he's one of the main characters of that operation. And that's what they do, is they're looking at the drone regulations and how do I get things across. A couple of years ago, they actually put out a advisory circular to all of their FISDOs to say, you need to spend so much time going after drone operators and do FAA ramp checks. So they put quotas on the FSDOs to say you will perform X number of ramp checks for any particular airport. Now, all these guys were doing is saying, hey, I know so-and-so, and he's always flying at this location. I'm just going to do all my ramp checks on this same guy over and over and over. And so you had somebody that would get 20 ramp checks on the same person. Did you really prove anything to the FAA? No, but I made my quota. I do think the FAA has addressed this to say, and I talked with Eric last year, I guess it was last year with the CUNY School of Law discussion of drone leadership forum, and he said, look, we can't have an FAA agent on every street corner. We just don't have those types of funds. We never are going to have those funds. And we can't train every officer on every street corner. We aren't going to be given those funds to do so by the federal government. So what we have to do is try to get as much information as we can out to the partner organizations, the local police departments, and be able to give them some training, whether it's, and they've come out with a book, Know Your Authority. They've come out with a couple of videos. And it's the idea that while these local police officers can start to take that training and come up to speed and be that person on every street corner. The challenge is you got these local departments that they don't have the funding either. They can't afford to have some officer sit for 2 hours and view a video or sit for an entire day in a class. They need the police out on the street to take care of real crime. And the other challenge with that, even if a police is out there and sees that you are operating illegally, they can't enforce federal regulations. So what they have to do, can I get your name? Can I get your FAA number? I'm going to report it to the FAA. So, it's this disconnect across the board. And I think that's where we're really challenged in terms of, meeting together with legislatures, because you have every mayor of every major city saying, hey, wait a minute, every single corner in my street is an airport. And they're right. I can go out to every single major city, stand on public grounds, and launch my drone. So that, they're looking for some type of enforcement action that says, hey, I want to be able to contain that individual who's going to fly over traffic illegally, who may have some improper intents, whether it be, peeping Tom or I'm going to fly my drone into something. But those are few and far between. It's very much national news when we hear about somebody who's arrested for being a peeping Tom with a drone. So this is not this commonplace thing. And is the FAA really in a place to regulate that? No, it's going to be at the local level. They've got to shift things to the local level, and there's going to be a real challenge for the FAA to do that, because they are the controller or the owner of jurisdiction of all airspace. That's that challenge that we see with Mike Lee. Where does airspace extend before it becomes national airspace? And you've got the FAA saying it's at the first blade of grass. It's going to take legal challenges to figure that out.
Well, Ryan, we're getting on to an hour of show, and this is typically when we start getting the fun question, and I think you may have answered that a little bit, but what's your favorite drone to fly?
Oh, yep. So, yeah, it's the M2P at this point. Just the capabilities are there, flies really well, even in high wind. I love the low light camera for, with the 1-inch sensor. My only upset piece about it is the darn thing is a bird magnet. The barn swallows love the darn thing. Stay away from me. I'm flying. Don't fly into me.
So I guess I'll because you have already answered the question, I'll do a quick follow-up question. What would make you want to switch to the new drone, maybe the 3 when it comes out?
That's going to be a real challenge. I'm looking at the Autel Evo Pro, the Evo 2 Pro, and I really like that one. It's going to be a challenge of, hey, what does the 3 look like? What's it got in specs? And I'll have to make that decision. I would love to see somebody other than DJI or Autel come out with a drone too. That's in that same type of capability, in that decent price range too. I'm not looking to buy a $50,000 drone.
Yep.
Yeah, I would hope. I mean, it would be neat if Sony did a consumer grade drone. Right now, they're working on the Air Peak. I've flown the Autel Evo 2. I think my friend Paul said it. It flies like a school bus, and that's a good analogy. Really it just isn't as agile. The maneuverability isn't the same as the Mavic 2 Pro, but yeah, it would be nice to see some competition for sure.
And you can't honestly. I can't fault DJI. They've really done exceptional products. That's really since the start. The Phantom 1 got me hooked into drones and kept me hooked into drones. And the other manufacturers are standing up things, and I like what I fly, but it's hard to push past DJI because they do offer great products and at great value.
Yeah. I would add that I would hope they add the Hasselblad color technology or the color science to more of their drones than just the Mavic 2 Pro going forward. I mean, obviously they're not going to do it with the Air 2S or the minis, but when they do release the next Mavic Pro, and I don't know. I mean, Ryan, do you think there's going to be a Phantom 5 or another Phantom? Just opinion, your opinion. You know how much I love
my opinion on that. No.
I don't know.
I would be very surprised. And I say that because I think DJI has really looked at the idea of that 250 gram solution where, they're looking at the category ones and they're going to kind of piece into the other categories to be able to fit their new drones with the FAA regulations to make those coincide 1-to-1. Does the Phantom offer a real value to flyers? I'm going to say yes. We look at the Phantom 4 Pro, the mechanical shutter, that is the drone to fly for mapping, plain and simple. When you look at the Inspire 2, that's the drone to fly for cinema photography, unless you're going to get into a red, right? So I think there's room in there for a P5 that has the capabilities of a higher end camera. I want to say changeable lenses on it, like the i2. That would make it fantastic, and it's of a size platform that makes it portable versus an Inspire 2.
I would love a Phantom 5 with interchangeable lenses. That'd be a dream.
Right.
I would love a Mavic 3 with
Mavic 3 with the interchangeable lenses. That would be good too.
Yeah. Oh, poor Brendan. He's the legal guy, and I think he's gotten me, Brendan, I really want this. And he's like, not my area.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate your time talking to us about regulation and a bunch of different things. And for all the listeners, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you leave a comment down there for Ryan and thanking him as well for his time. And you get all the information for his blog from Kara when we started. We're going to put links down in the description so you can see all those. And in the meantime, I guess we'll see you guys next week for another guest. Ryan, thanks again.
Thank you for having me. I much appreciate it.
Awesome.
Take care.